I'm Chris, and this is episode 5 of Patriot Party News, The Woke Invasion. Today we're going to go over a piece I found on the Federalist by Mark Pulliam. The title of the piece is, Leftists are colonizing red towns like mine, and local Republicans are clueless. I'm going to read you some excerpts from the piece and then give you my thoughts on what's going on. From the piece. Blue states tend to be dominated by urban voters, large numbers of unionized government employees, and, in California, a technology-based economy that relies on large numbers of young college-educated and, in many cases, foreign-born employees. Even historically red states such as Texas exhibit symptoms of dysfunctional leftist governance. In their burgeoning urban areas, Austin is rapidly becoming a clone of San Francisco and Portland. We have come to expect blue states to be woke, displaying fealty to the latest academic fads such as critical race theory and other forms of identity politics. Rural America, the flyover country, populated by Donald Trump voting deplorables, is supposed to be immune from this trend. So before we go any further, I think it's good for us to actually talk about what critical race theory is. So I pulled up the dictionary and got a definition for you. Critical race theory is the view that the law and legal institution are inherently racist, and that race itself, instead of being biologically grounded and natural, is a social concept that is used by white people to further their economic and political interests at the expense of people of color. According to critical race theory, a racial inequality emerges from the social, economic, and legal differences that white people create between races to maintain elite white interests in labor markets and politics, giving rise to poverty and criminality in many minority communities. The critical race theory movement officially recognized itself in 1989 at the first annual workshop on critical race theory, though its intellectual origins go back much further to the 1960s and 70s. Critical race theory has spread beyond the confines of legal studies to many other fields, notably women's and gender studies, education, American studies, and sociology. Critical race theory spin-off movements formed by Asian Americans, Latinx, and LGBTQ scholars have also taken hold. So what does it mean? Well, honestly, what it's saying is that your race and your skin color is important. See, for my whole life, I've been taught not to view race, not to look at someone's skin color and make judgments about it. But now that's actually racist, because according to critical race theory, if I don't acknowledge your marginalization, then I'm marginalizing you. You see how ridiculous this is? But this woke nonsense is everywhere. Now, Donald Trump put a stop to that for federal employees, but that doesn't mean it isn't in your local communities and at your schools. The piece continues, as a resident of a small town in East Tennessee, I regret to report that wokeness is everywhere. Even in the brightest red areas of Republican majority states, my town is home to a small 200-year-old Presbyterian affiliated liberal arts college that appears to be an island of sanity and higher education, but it's not, and neither is the rest of the town. When we relocated here from Austin, my wife and I imagined the school was comparable to Hillsdale College, except nestled in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. My wife and I quickly learned the reality is otherwise, when a supposedly faith-based lecture we attended on campus was devoted to the teachings of Karl Marx rather than Jesus Christ. The lecturer, who teaches religious studies at Skidmore College, is the daughter of the host school's equally leftist campus minister. Even though the area is overwhelmingly Republican, the local paper, owned by the National Change headquartered out of the state, is unfailingly and obnoxiously left. The editor admits that one of his life's greatest disappointments was being interviewed by the Washington Post and getting turned down for the job. The local paper is a Washington Post wannabe, albeit relying heavily on Associated Press reporting. It consistently boosts leftist ideas locally and nationally. So before we go on, I'd just like to point out that if it was the other way around, if it was a liberal area and it was a highly conservative newspaper, you know exactly what the liberals would do. and I'm sorry, not liberals, the leftists would do. They would go after the advertisers. They would cancel them. Now, I know that that seems really disgusting, but at this point, people need to fight back. If you live in an area that is highly conservative and has conservative values, and you see this kind of trash in your neighborhood, why not point it out? Now, I'm not saying that you should call their advertisers and get them canceled, but why not talk to the other townsfolk and tell them not to read that garbage? You know, if the whole community decides that they don't like the paper and they don't want it anymore and nobody reads it, guess what? It's going to go away. We have the power. We have the power of our pocketbooks, guys. If you don't pay for it, then there will be nobody there to write this garbage. The piece goes on. In my local school district, for example, the unelected school superintendent, or director as the position is called here, appointed a diversity task force. That includes an activist college student who told a group of protesters organized by the local NAACP chapter in the wake of the George Floyd incident that we need radical change and we need it now. The district's paid diversity trainer, who instructs on the topics of systemic racism, racial equality, inclusive leadership, and unconscious bias, among other dubious topics, and an officer of a community organization that describes its mission as working for racial justice. The stated goals of the 12-person diversity task force include acknowledging that racism exists in our schools and community. Now, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. People are racist. People are people. We always put each other in groups. There's no hiding that. I mean, we can acknowledge it and we can try to be better. But the problem with these diversity trainings isn't that they're trying to stamp out racism. It's that they are actually actively creating racism. Most of you, like me, probably learned not to be a racist when you were a kid. I mean, I was in the Navy. We all lived together. We worked together. There was no problems. We all enjoyed each other's company. Racism wasn't a big deal. But something happened during the presidency of Barack Obama where race became this big issue again, and it's continuing to grow, and it's making me sick to my stomach. Okay? You want to know how to get rid of racism? Like Denzel Washington said, stop talking about it. Because I'm going to tell you what happens when you tell people they're racist all the time. They become racist. If you want to create a white nationalist problem, a white supremacy problem, keep doing this crap. Because you know what? You can tell somebody they're bad for so long, and eventually they're just going to become bad. It's absolutely ridiculous. Mark closes his piece with, in short, weak leadership, public inattention, lack of organization, and general complacency make small towns vulnerable to aggression by liberal activists. Wokeness can be resisted successfully when the majority of voters actively oppose it. But in the absence of political resistance, the left's agenda will take over as inexorably as the rising tide. So, all of this is important, guys. But the school district stuff is extremely important. Now, I know I've said this before, but you need to read Orwell's 1984. The kids in that book would rat their parents out. And that's exactly what's going to happen now to you if you don't control what your kids are learning. Now, I know that sounds bad, but you need to be active in the school board. You need to attend the meetings. You need to watch what they're learning. Because, one, they could be learning that they're bad just because of the color of their skin, which is highly unacceptable. When my son was in elementary school, I found out that they made him do a privilege line. And in a privilege line, what they do is they line up an entire class of students, and then they read out different items in your life, or, different aspects of what you have going for you. So if you're a white male, you take 2 steps forward. If you're a black female, you take 2 steps backwards. If you have both parents in your house, you take 1 step forward. Right? Eventually, one of the kids ends up in the front of the line. So he or she, probably he, is the most privileged. But you know what else? One of the kids ends up in the back. Now, what I was told is that the little girl that ended up in the back when my son did a privilege line started bawling her eyeballs out. How evil is that? So while critical race theory might sound good and it's a buzzword and it's going around and diversity training is all over the place, this stuff is harmful. It isn't just harmful for white people. It isn't just harmful for Asian people. It's harmful for everybody. We were working really hard to come together. Everyone was getting closer to each other, especially after events like 2001 and September 11th. You know, we all came together. But stuff like this is exactly why the country is tearing itself apart. People really do believe that there's some kind of agenda against them just because of the color of their skin. Now, personally, I know a lot of people. A lot of them are black. Some of them are Mexican. Well, a lot of them are Mexican. You know what? We all get along fine. So stop trying to push this crap on us. It's unacceptable. So before I go, I'd like to have a special message for all the liberals who decided to move to Texas because they had to flee their blue states. We're really happy that you guys are here. You know, the party is getting bigger. We're going to have a lot more fun. But even though you might not think so, the reason you left that blue state wasn't because of someone else. It was because you voted for policies that suck. You voted for politicians that suck. So when you come here, just follow our lead, okay? In fact, why don't you ask a few natives how they feel? Really have a genuine discussion about it. Because at the end of the day, it was the opportunities in Texas that brought you here. The opportunities in Texas exist because of our policies, and they don't exist in your crappy state because of their policies. And for all these major companies that are moving here and moving their headquarters here, you know what? Why don't you have a real honest talk with your employees and encourage them to stay in those crappy states if they don't want to adopt our culture? Thanks. All right, everyone. That's the end of episode 5. Thank you very much. If you could like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. And if you could share and help us grow, that'd be even better. Make sure you follow us on Gab at gab.com/Patriot Party News. So we're on YouTube and on Rumble, Patriot Party News in both locations. I'm going to put Mark's story in the description so you can click on the link. Give the Federalist some love. They've been having a hard time with tech censorship too. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow.